Welcome to the InnovaBuzz podcast, where we share all kinds of tips, advice, and interview guests on all things innovation and leadership in modern marketing. Each episode is a conversation with inspiring people who make wonderful contributions to our knowledge in these areas and spark curiosity and ideas to pursue. Join me, Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBuzz, and let's get into today's masterclass on this InnovaBuzz podcast.
I think many people go into business wanting to have great impact because they have a purpose. They want to have, they're socially conscious, but they put that before the health of the business. And there's a term for this. It's called not-for-profits, at least in the US. There's these businesses that start up and say, we're going to change the world, and they have no source of income. And sadly, many for-profit businesses really should be categorized as not-for-profits. They're all about changing the world. They're screaming from the rooftop, but they're not making a dime, and then they're not sustainable. So I also, in this model, I have it the get to give model. There's a common phrase out there that you need to give to get. And I understand that idea, but when it comes to business, it's really about getting to give. We need to have consistent sales. We need to get sales. We need to get profit. We need to get efficiency within our business in order to be able to contribute, to give impact, and to achieve a legacy.
Hi there, Innovator. It's really great to be back with another episode. I hope you've had an awesome week so far. I trust too that you enjoyed my recent conversations with Jackie Jubb, copywriter and business mentor, and with Rebecca Lloyd of Rowboat. I'm really excited to have on the InnovaBuzz podcast as my guest today somebody who I've been a fan of for quite some time, Mike Michalowicz, who's the author of Profit First, The Pumpkin Plan, Clockwork, and the Toilet Paper Entrepreneur. He's also the host of the Entrepreneurship Elevated podcast and Grow My Accounting Practice podcast, and a popular speaker who's shared his insights on business and entrepreneurship at TEDx, at Creative Live, among others. His columns have appeared in the Wall Street Journal, in Entrepreneur, and in the Harvard Business Review, as well as many others. Mike's mission is to eradicate entrepreneurial poverty, and his books look at various aspects of business to provide a simple framework that helps businesses grow to be profitable and to grow sustainably and to make a difference. A quick promotional message from our sponsor. That's my business, InnovaBuzz. Now, we help coaches and consultants build professional credibility, engage their target audience, and connect with their ideal clients. The result is that their ideal clients virtually self-select and line up to work with them. Now, to help you get really clear on who your ideal client is and how you can build a strong and enduring relationship with them, take a look at our Marketing Master mini class. In less than 30 minutes, you get to work through 2 modules and get absolute clarity on your ideal client and how you can communicate with them to build and strengthen an engaging, enduring relationship. You can even use this exercise to define your ideal audience for a podcast, a video, or a speech or presentation. Access the Marketing Master mini class at innovabuzz.co/Marketing Master. It is completely free and it's accessible without you even giving away your email. In our discussion today, Mike talked to me about what he means by entrepreneurial poverty. And it's not just about money. And we talked about his recommended steps to eradicating it. We talked about biomimicry and what we can learn from nature, and in particular with one of his books, From Bees. And we talked about his entrepreneurial hierarchy of needs. Without further ado then, let's fly into the hive and get the buzz from Mike Michalowicz. Hi, I'm your host, Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBuzz, and I'm really excited today to welcome to the InnovaBuzz podcast from Mountain Lakes, and we've had a conversation about that pre-recording. Mountain Lakes, New Jersey in the USA, Mike Michalowicz, who's the author of Clockwork, Profit First, The Pumpkin Plan, The Toilet Paper Entrepreneur, and Surge. Welcome to the podcast, Mike. It's a real privilege to have you as my guest.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. And in regards to Mountain Lakes, I know we had a conversation about it earlier. There isn't any mountains nor lakes in this part of New Jersey, except I am looking outside my window, and then 2 towns over, there is a substantial lake, and I can see it from here. So maybe it's like an envy factor why we named this town Mountain Lakes, because it's over there. So that's kind of
because you can see something. Yeah,
maybe that's why.
Yeah. Now, I'm a big fan of your work, and Profit First, certainly that philosophy has really changed my business. And I'd like to give a shout out to Alicia and James Crook of Massage Champions. They were guests on our episode 194 of the InnovaBuzz podcast, and they suggested we interview you, Mike. So big hello to Alicia and James, and I know they're big fans of your work as well.
Big hello to both of you, and thank you for suggesting me. It's a privilege to gain exposure for the stuff I'm doing overseas, at least for me overseas. I know it's local for you, but for me it's a big deal.
Yeah. Now, Mike, you've launched multiple businesses and you've been an entrepreneur for quite some time, but now you actually consciously brand yourself as an author. So whilst I'm really looking forward to talking about the entrepreneurial journey, but I'm kind of really looking forward to exploring the books in some more detail and the philosophy behind those as well. But before we do that, tell us why you actually consciously now call yourself an author rather than an entrepreneur.
It was something that hit me. I don't know this specific moment, but I do remember the emotion. I had written my first book and I was still calling myself an entrepreneur. If people said, what do you do for a living? I'm like, oh, I'm an entrepreneur. I own a business. Oh, and I've written a book. It was a secondary thought. And I realized if I'm really going to have an impact as an author, and if I'm really going to devote my life to this, and that's what I was saying, but I wasn't acting consistently with it, I realized I needed to own the title. And so after this epiphany, when people ask me, what do? I'd say I'm an author. And maybe it didn't change the way people perceive me. I think it did actually, but really it changed the way I perceive myself. And now my books, when I was writing, would never be secondary to the other work I'm doing. I would always put everything I did into it to carry that title appropriately. And it's interesting. I do still have some entrepreneurial endeavors that I'm very excited and proud about, but everything in my execution is secondary to authorship. That's who I am, and that's why I own the title.
Yeah, it's interesting. I went through kind of an exercise, and I'm starting to embrace it a little bit more now, where there was a small business festival organisation meeting a little while back, and I wanted to talk about podcasting at that festival, and so I went there and I thought, I'm going to call myself a podcaster rather than a marketing business and so on, and really own that today. And it's amazing that kind of people change their perception of you straight away just by
sure.
That, so.
And I think of ourselves. There was a study that I read, and I'm going to bastardize this a little bit, but there was a study of a company, I believe in Brazil, and they manufacture bottles, tin bottles and glass bottles and so forth. And they were, according to the story, as I recall it, lacking or slacking in the market, that the competition was beating them on innovative concepts and so forth. And what they did, this company, they went to their line workers and said, you're no longer line workers. You are engineers and inventors. And their role didn't change. Their title changed. But now when they had meetings, these inventors and engineers started to come with greater and better ideas. And they started to invent from the line up. What it just points to is the fact that is common. It's human nature to comply with our titles. If someone calls themselves a loser, they're going to behave that way. If they say, I'm not smart, I stink, I'm horrible, they're going to behave consistently with it. So a title is almost the ultimate form of an affirmation.
Yeah, that's a good example, good story. Now, what's your purpose today? What's your why?
It's very clear for me. So it's 3 words: eradicate to entrepreneurial poverty. And let me define that because it may be a little vague, but for me, it's very specific. I have found, first in my own experience and now in so many other entrepreneurs, that there's a lot of struggle. There's financial struggle for most entrepreneurs. In fact, most entrepreneurs are in check-to-check survival. It's you sell something today to cover the bills today, and if we don't sell something, we are in trouble. It's this constant hand-to-mouth. So that's one form of what I call entrepreneurial poverty. There's also the time poverty, which I think is actually more insidious. It's where we continue to cut off and carve out our personal life, our family, our sleep time, anything, just to work more. So there's this time poverty. There's emotional poverty. There's different flavors of it. And what I think it's rooted in is there's a lot of unnecessary complexity in entrepreneurship. There's a lot of misunderstanding. There's a lot of vanity that plays into. And so I believe it's my mission to fix that. And how I do it is through my books, but specifically in trying to make entrepreneurship simple. Not that entrepreneurship is simple, but to give the tools that make it simple or simpler for entrepreneurs. And also to give them a dose of reality. Like entrepreneurship is hard, and we don't need to brag about the top line. There really isn't much there that you can be successful as you are and who you are and have a business you enjoy, and you can do it on your own terms. It just takes time and effort. So I don't think entrepreneurial poverty is necessary, but it's very pervasive, and my mission is to eradicate it.
Yeah, and I love that. I think most of the books that I've read, you've got that either in the foreword or in the epilogue, and it's very clear. So, yeah, I thought it was well worth talking about that a little bit. And, of course, the stories, how you construct your books, I love the way it does actually make it really clear as to the point of the story, the point of the book, and the lessons to take into a business through that.
Yeah, so I love telling stories, but I also really appreciate the importance of stories. Stories are the stickiness factor. We can remember stories. It is, it's easier to remember the Brazilian company fixing bottles by fixing names, as opposed to just the facts. Change a name and you'll fix bottles. Like that is actually harder to remember than a story. So I heard an expert, I think it was Les Brown, once said this. He goes, never give a point without a message, or a story. I'm sorry, never give a point without a story, and never give a story without a point. And those things need to work collaboratively. So when I write my books, whenever I make a point, I am sure to buttress it with a story that gives color to it. And I also, my books, I write in a very simple way. Like these are, at least in the U.S., we call them Dick and Jane books, like the kindergarten level books. It's true. I mean, it's true in Aussie land too. But I want to make them very simple because I need simple. For me, the reason I'm on this mission to eradicate entrepreneurial poverty, the reason I do it through making these concepts and tools simpler is because I have lived entrepreneurial poverty. It almost destroyed me, and I'm here to fix that. And for me to comprehend complex stuff like accounting or whatever it is, it's above my head. So I need to take this complex stuff and make it simple for my own use. And I found, as I wrote my first book, doing this honestly for myself, I found that other people need this too. And it really, I think, connects with a community that's looking to simplify the complexities of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, that's a really good approach. And we have John and Betty, not Dick and Jane, but
okay.
That's what it was when I was young. I don't know what it is now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have to be honest and make a confession here. When, I heard a lot of people talking about Profit First and the book, and I kind of had a look at the cover and looked at some of the text about it, and I thought, I don't like accounting and that. I don't think I'd like that book. And I had this prejudgment without really knowing much more about it. But then I came across The Pumpkin Plan. And I thought that sounds like an intriguing title. And I read that book, and that's a really great example of using story to as a metaphor. And for me, I've been preaching this message to clients all along of, you've got to niche down, you've got to focus.
Sure.
The more you focus, the more you actually grow. It's kind of a little bit counterintuitive. And then I read the pumpkin plan and thought, wow, this is a really great way to explain that whole concept. And then, of course, I thought I must go and have a look at Profit First, because the pumpkin plan is really entertaining as well for those that haven't read it. And so then I read Profit First, and of course that changed my life a bit.
Well, thank you for saying that. So Pumpkin Plan is actually my favorite book that I wrote, just my own little preference. So I really went heavy into the storytelling there, and it still had an edge to it. As you move along, it's funny, and I guess any career, as your exposure grows, sometimes you got to kind of dull those edges a little bit, because you can offend the greater community. So I still have an edge in all my books, definitely. But Pumpkin Plan was edgier. And what I also found is there's different, I call them ports of entry. A port of entry is, if you think of it for a country or for a city or a town, like I'm in New Jersey here, and you can basically access the state of New Jersey a few ways. There's an airport, it's called Newark Airport. There is a main thoroughway called the New Jersey Turnpike, and you can come in through New York City, which is there's a Lincoln Tunnel, and there's the George Washington Bridge. All those I consider ports of entry. They're the access ways into New Jersey. The sinful part of New Jersey is all those access points come into our industrial region, which is smog and filth and gross. So New Jersey has a reputation for being a filthy state. The real kind of definition of New Jersey is there's farmland, is one of the biggest blueberry growers in the country, and there's all these beautiful elements of New Jersey that maybe represent 99% of New Jersey, but since you come into New Jersey through the 1%, that's the opinion people have. And so I found these ports of entry matter. And similarly, Profit First, that title can be offensive to some people. They're like, hold on, is this guy only about profit? Is he just the money guy? What a greedy jerk. And I realized that I told my publisher, it is the best title we felt to represent what the brand does once you get it. We also knew it'd be controversial, which was a risk, because that might be an ugly port to come in through. So what happens as an author, because I have other titles, some people come in another way. Like you came in through the Pumpkin Plan, discover that book, and then say, hey, this stuff resonates with me. Let me go back and visit that potentially ugly port. And you find out, the other 99% is not, controversial. It's not about greed. It's actually about a way to grow a healthy business. Yeah,
that's exactly right. So as I mentioned, the Pumpkin Plan is all around focusing your business and niching down. So tell us a little bit of the story at a very high level, because I think it's fascinating how you drew that analogy, and how I guess you came to the realization that, hey, there's a story that really makes this clear for me.
Oh yeah, and it worked for me. That's the one, I think, great benefit of being an author first, entrepreneur second, is that when I write these books, I have guinea pigs, my own businesses. I own a mix of them that I can test this on. And secondly is I have to adhere to it. I mean, when I write the book, I better live by these principles. Otherwise, it's hypocritical. So the Pumpkin Plan was something I needed for my own business. Before I wrote the book, I discovered this through a business coach, applied it, and it worked so successfully. It became the seed for the book. But what I discovered is there is a faction of farmers that can grow colossal vegetables, specifically in this case, pumpkins. So they call them colossal pumpkin farmers. And they grow them in Australia too. Like you'll see a picture of some toothy guy with his arm up against a pumpkin that's the size of a car. And I'm like, how do these farmers do this? So I went on to study their process, and I deconstructed it. It's basically 7 steps. I've now compiled down to 5 actually, but there's very specific steps they follow to grow a colossal pumpkin. I found that as I researched businesses that grew colossally, they followed the exact same process. So I translated this pumpkin farming process into growing a colossal business. And what it is niche specialization. It's focusing on seeds. So one of the big elements that these farmers do is they are very selective of their seeds before they plant it, where a farmer that's in the quantity game trying to grow as many pumpkins as possible for our holiday season here in the fall, what they do is they want to get cheap seeds and spread them all around. these colossal farmers select a seed that matches their climate, matches their soil content, and so forth. And that was just one of the steps. But I found that businesses that are most successful define and understand their community, their environment, their competition, and perfectly position themselves in there to position themselves for explosive growth, as opposed to this kind of mixed blitzkrieg of let's try everything. And that's one of the steps, but it's definitely the starting step.
Yeah, and then moving on from there, it's about nurturing that one particular flower and then fruit that becomes the giant pumpkin, isn't it?
Right. Right. And then how this translates into business is once you start acquiring clients for your business, there is a set of clients that are the greatest revenue source for you and generate the most profit. It's the old 80-20 rule that 20% of your clients yield 80% of your revenue and profit. 80% of your clients are only yielding 20%. So identify that narrow 20% of clients and then clone them. So now I actually call it the cloning process. It's pretty interesting. Most businesses actually unintentionally clone their worst clients. So you have that client that's a total jerk and always complaining, and they threaten not to pay you. They want you to redo the work. And what happens is we pay attention to them, especially as the owner. We're like, oh, they're the squeaky wheel. We need to oil that. We focus on them. But what happens is what you focus on flourishes. Yeah. So if you focus on your bad clients, no surprise, that client will continue to work with you. They likely go to their friends too, who are also a bunch of jerks, and say, you wouldn't believe it. There's this company here. I complain all the time. I threaten not to pay them, and they continue to work for me. You got to work with these guys. And so we consistently attract these negative clients. What we can do is simply focus on our best clients, and we evaluate them, identify the clients that pay us the best, that we love working with, and then start the cloning process for them. And how we do that is we just concentrate on them. We learn where they congregate, the communities where they acquire information, the podcasts they listen to, the conferences they go to, and start targeting our efforts there. We build a specialized skill set for them, learn how to serve that community better than anyone else. So you start building a mastery reputation. And when you concentrate on these higher end clients, and there's more to it, but that's the very fundamental level, you concentrate on these higher end clients, you'll start to clone them.
Yeah, I like that. The clients go and talk to other clients, and
it's true,
like you say, where you've actually pleased them and made them feel as though their needs are being taken care of, they'll talk about you, and that can work against you if it's the wrong type of client.
And but the funny thing is, we don't think it will. We're like, oh, we took care of that squeaky wheel. There's another challenge with those low end clients. And it's the cost that we don't talk about, but it's probably the biggest cost. It's the emotional weight. If you have that client that is not paying you well, that you have to redo work, there's a financial cost. But also you're losing sleep. At night, you're worrying about this client. When you wake up in the morning, you're hoping they're not going to call or not have a problem again. And that is waste of time. That powerful thinking time could be spent on how do I get more excellent clients? How do I expand my business? How do I become of even greater service? But that always is pushed by the side when we have these negative clients that we have to serve first.
Yeah, so like I say, I really like the pumpkin plan and the whole analogy with the pumpkin farmers, and there's such detail in what they do to grow that giant pumpkin that all translated beautifully into the business sense.
Well, thank you for saying that.
Now, in Profit First, to me, that was all around changing your thinking around money in the business. And you mentioned earlier about living in entrepreneurial poverty and from paycheck to paycheck. But in this one, it's kind of like developing profit as a habit rather than, as something that kind of happens if you're lucky, or if you're doing a good job, it happens. Here, it's a habit that you actually do, and that's hence Profit First. So how did you come up with that idea?
Well, I struggle with profit in my own businesses forever. I've been in the entrepreneurial space for 30 years. I've been calling myself an entrepreneur for 20 before I declared myself as an author, but I continue to run businesses. And for that first 20 years, I struggled with profitability. what I've come to realize is, well, it was an interesting conundrum. I was able to sell my services and products to my clients, deliver my services, have them have a positive experience, pay me money. I was able to do the hundreds, if not thousands, of things that a business needs to do to be successful. And I suspect, Jurgen, of all your listeners, the same is true. We get so many things right. But then I was like, how come I can't figure out profit? I can do everything, but I can't figure out profit. What's wrong with me? I really thought something was wrong with me. And at the end of the year, when there was no profit, I'd be like, gosh darn it, maybe next year. And that's when I finally discovered, I look at the formula we've been told, and this is a global used formula. It says sales or turnover minus expenses equals profit. That's the formula over and over again. What it says is profit is at the very bottom. And we actually will use vernacular that affirms profits at the bottom. It's bottom line, or it's the year end, or the final take. Whenever we use those terms or see something as something that comes last, how we respond behaviorally is we say it's insignificant. Like if I was rushed to the hospital today and the doctor says, you need to exercise more and stop smoking and drinking, and I come out of the hospital, I likely won't say, you know what, I'm going to start putting my health last. I'm going to say, I'm going to put my health first. Because when something is a priority and important, we put it first. Family comes first. Loved ones come first. When something comes last, it means it can wait. It's insignificant. So what I did with profit first is put profit first. I flipped the formula. So now it's turnover minus profit equals expenses. And when you subtract profit first, how you do this in practice is every time you have revenue come into your bank, you deposit the income, you immediately take a predetermined percentage of that money as profit, remove it from the business, hide it away, and then run the business off the remainder. What this is the pay yourself first principle applied to business. And what you're doing is that you're assuring profitability. You're taking a percentage first. So you're assuring profits, hiding it away, and then your business tells you what it truly has available to operate.
Yeah, and the way you do that is very structured in terms of building that as a habit. And essentially, you say that when you focus on profit first, you inevitably figure out how to be profitable consistently with the business because you've determined this is what I have available to operate the business.
That's exactly right. So, if say $1,000 comes in today, in the traditional approach to business, and what I found is most entrepreneurs, and I've traveled throughout Australia, throughout the world now, when I interview entrepreneurs, this is true for the global entrepreneurial community. Most people do what I call bank balance accounting. And what that is instead of reading all the complicated accounting statements, we log into our bank account, see how much money we have, and based upon our balance, we make decisions. Oh, good, I have money, I can spend it. Oh my gosh, I have no money. We got to sell something quickly. A panic ensues. And so what I realized is we need a system that works with our natural behavior, that leverages bank balance accounting. So Profit First is a system where we set up these accounts at a bank. And in this example, say $1,000 comes in. Well, traditionally, we used to have $1,000 in the bank account, and we say, oh, I got $1,000 to spend. With the Profit First system, we set up multiple accounts with an intended purpose. So one account is for profit, one is to pay the owner a salary, which is very different than profit. Profit is a reward for being a shareholder. Owner's compensation is a pay that the owner gets for being an owner-operator. We have to pay for taxes, so that's reserved. We have to pay for the operating expenses of the office and maybe some other things. So we set up these accounts. We have what we call the foundational 5 accounts. Income being one, that's a depository account, and the other 4 I shared. But as businesses get more sophisticated at this, they add more accounts in many cases. Now money comes into the income account. We then, as the next step, is we divide, or I guess divide is the right word, divide that money up into the other accounts based upon a percentage. So we may say we're going to put 10% toward profit of all deposits. Maybe we're going to pay 30% toward paying myself. Maybe we're going to put another 15% toward taxes. So now of that $1,000 that came in, $100, 10% is going to profit. $300 is going to the pay of the owner for their salary. $150 is getting reserved for taxes. And that leaves $450 for operating expenses. And this is a moment of clarity. We used to say, oh, I got $1,000 to operate my business. You don't. you have $450. And if you want to be profitable, if you want to pay yourself well, if you don't want to worry about taxes, this is what you must operate off of. This is what the healthy business is. So for some businesses, when they set this up, it's a shock in the beginning. And they're like, I can't pay my bills. And the response we have is, if you can't pay your bills, it's your business telling you can't afford your bills. There's a fundamental flaw in your business. There's a margin issue, meaning you got to charge more for what you're doing, or you have a expense issue, or usually it's a combination of the two. You got to cut expenses, increase margins. But if you can't pay your bills, it's not that the system doesn't work. There's a flaw in your business that's been identified, and you need to fix it. And over time, and we suggest, by the way, that business doesn't start abruptly with big profit numbers and so forth. They build into it. It's a slow, dripped out kind of rollout plan. But over time, now we have well over 150,000 companies globally doing this. And we think by year end, we're going to have over 200,000 companies that have implemented Profit First. The ones that roll it out slowly, stick with the system, are consistently more profitable and actually growing faster than their competition.
Yeah, well, my experience is certainly, as you described, that you take a serious look at your expenses and in my case, I was doing exactly as you said. You'd look at the bank account or I'd get perhaps a new client or a new payment. I thought, I can reward myself. I can go spend that money now. Whereas looking at that profit first philosophy, you've got those fixed expenses, and then you go back and look at, if my expenses are actually higher than that, what do I need to do? How can I trim some expenses? And then you actually learn to become more efficient and learn to delay some decisions that in the end you decide, no, I don't actually really need that new acquisition, that new shiny toy, whatever it might be.
Yeah. And to your point, it becomes a discipline. And the system is something I suggest that to people that do it, to roll it out slowly. Like in the book, I explain based on different revenue ranges of a business, what kind of allocations they should consider or target. We conducted a survey of other businesses that were really fiscally healthy, industry agnostic, and found what the best of the best do. So we said we all should be targeting the best of the best. Like if my son comes back from school, I don't talk to him and saying, hey, how's the average in class doing? Like, what's the average grade? Go for that. I instead say, I expect the best of yourself. I want the best of you. So we set this high standard, but to move to that immediately is unrealistic and even hurtful for businesses to say, you know what, we've never been profitable, but now we're going to start taking 20% profit. That's too abrupt of a change. So we have a rollout plan. We suggest that most businesses start at a very low percentage, maybe 1 or 2% in profit, see how they do, make some adjustments the next quarter, increase profit, cut costs a little more, increase margins, and keep on slowly marching forward on our profit numbers and other numbers that will improve the health of our business over time. And then maybe we hit the target 2 years from now. But if you go in these small, deliberate steps, the likelihood of you achieving more profit than you ever have before is everything short of guaranteed. But it's short of guaranteed, but it's going to be pretty close. It's only if you go in full throttle that you put yourself really at risk.
Yeah, that's right. To me, it's a little like, if you want to lose weight, go and try and lose 10 kilograms in a month. And then, of course, what happens is you say, oh, that was great. I lost 10 kilograms in a month. Now I can afford to eat some more. And then you start putting on weight again. Whereas if you say, well, okay, I'm going to lose 1 kilogram a month over the next 10 months, and then it kind of becomes a habit.
Right.
In your new exercise and eating.
Right. Our brain starts to rewire, routines. Right? So losing 10 kilograms in a month, I presume you can do a crash diet and actually pull that off, but that's not sustainable. I assume, losing 1 kilogram a month is a permanent dietary change, and because you've sustained it for so long, it becomes your expectation, your habit. Same thing with Profit First. If you just abrupt shift, some businesses can't even sustain it for a month, so they give up and they say, the system failed me. When it wasn't the system, it was too abrupt of a change, and the new pattern or habit hasn't had time to establish. So rolling it out slowly but deliberately and consistently does have far greater results.
That's great. Well, I do want to move on to talk about some of the other books, and I know Clockwork is a little bit about the time issue you talked about earlier, that entrepreneurs are not just struggling with their finances, but they're also struggling with time. That certainly applies to me even today. And so tell us a little bit about the philosophy behind Clockwork. Before we move on, I'd like to move on to the newest book, because when I read Clockwork, I started to think there's a system here.
Yeah. This guy's got something up his sleeve, doesn't he?
Yeah.
So Clockwork, the subtitle is Design Your Business to Run Itself. And I found that probably the most devastating form of entrepreneurial poverty is time poverty, that we feel this compulsion to carry the business on our back, that the only way for our business to scale is for us to work harder. And the trade-off for that is our family, our lives, our loved ones, sleep. And that's no way to scale a business. Sinfully, the terminology that floats around a lot now is this hustle and grind mentality. Like, you got to hustle, you got to grind it out. And I think there's a good sentiment behind it, but I think it's a very damaging belief. I think the idea is when you start a business, you got to be there for it. You got to find your way, and it's going to require extraordinary effort. But I think it's being interpreted that a successful business is all about hustle and grind, and it's absolutely not. It's about smartness. It's about strategy, being strategic, and it's about choreographing resources. So Clockwork is originally I was looking into productivity, which is kind of a hustle and grind mentality, and found that productivity is a necessary element. You got to be productive, but it's not the game changer. The game changer for entrepreneurship is the organization of the resources around us, our employees or virtual help or our clients or our vendors or a combination thereof. But having a very clear vision of where we want to move the business, and then moving the chess pieces in the right sequence to achieve that vision. That's what Clockwork's all about, is converting to that role of designing outcomes as opposed to doing the work.
Yeah, and you talked there about how bees tackle that in terms of everyone knowing their role, but there's one purpose.
Right. So good. Yeah, very good observation. So there's a thing called biomimicry, and what this is the realization that nature has figured out solutions over millions, if not billions of years to problems. And we may be able to extrapolate really effective strategies by just observing nature. So you'll see also this common theme that, like in the pumpkin plan, I was studying how pumpkins or plants grow. One of my books called Surge, I was studying wave patterns and how ocean waves work in moving things, and the power and force of that, and how that translates into market waves and market momentum. On Clockwork, I was studying beehives, and they follow a simple rule set. It's a 2-rule set. Rule 1 is always make sure that the queen bee role is being served. And what the queen bee role is in a beehive is the production of eggs. So all the bees know that they have to have an eye on egg production. And if egg production is compromised, it's failing, it is the responsibility of every bee to make it go again, to change the temperature of the hive. Sometimes that inhibits egg production, or to defend the hive from an invader or whatever. Once that's rule number 1, that's the most important thing. Rule number 2 is then these bees will go out and do their primary job function, whatever that may be, collecting nectar or whatever. Well, I found in business, every business has a very specific key function that the business's success is hinged on. And one area where people get confused, they say, oh, does that mean there's a single queen bee effectively doing that role? No. The queen bee role is just simply the most important role. It doesn't mean it's a specific individual. Actually, an ideal business will have multiple people serving that role, or huge amounts of people serving that role, so there's no dependency on any individual. But everyone in the organization, regardless of what function they service, needs to know what the primary function is. And if it slips, they need to revert and address it. And the real world example that I don't have in the book, but I've been using frequently, and I'll probably revise the book one day to include this, is FedEx. FedEx's queen bee role is the movement of packages. It's called logistics. They depend on that because their promise to their customer base is we deliver packages on time. Well, the activity that makes that a reality is logistics. So that's their queen bee role, the most important function that FedEx is hinging their success on. Then, if we look at the bees, if you will, of the FedEx business, when FedEx's queen bee role of logistics is threatened, people step up and step in. So every holiday season, January, December, massive package shipping because of the religious holidays around then and so forth. FedEx experiences more than I think 4 times package shipment demand in November, December, January than any other time of year. And so they're threatened. If they just leave the business as is, the current staff can't carry it, and they're going to start missing package delivery dates and so forth. So what happens is the people behind the desk, like the managers, they get in the cars and the trucks, they start delivering. They hire extra staff. Everyone takes very specific action to make sure the queen bee role keeps humming along. No pun intended. But we as business owners need to identify what's that critical function that we're hinging our success on, and then make sure that everyone is ready to serve and protect that. Even if we're a business of one, this means that we have backup or contingency plans that if we're struggling to deliver on this one critical component, that it keeps moving along somehow, some way. And maybe it's just your vendors kind of stepping in some way, but you have to have that plan for it.
Yeah, and that's, again, the metaphor, I think, works really well there. And I like that you say using the biomimicry. I mean, certainly we did that in my scientific days when we were doing developing products. We learned a lot from nature. So it's a really good model.
Yeah.
Now, to me, I kind of started to see a pattern there, but then you're about to launch your new book. I think it's available on Amazon for pre-order already.
Yeah.
And that's called Fix This Next. And in that, based on what I've read in the promotional material, you talk about a hierarchy of needs in a business and then identifying what needs immediate attention. So tell us a little bit more about that book so that people get an idea and can go and buy it.
Yeah, I'm particularly excited about this book. And let me tell you how it came about. So what you have seen is I'm writing hopefully a compendium of books addressing all different needs in entrepreneurship. And I've identified like 25 different core elements. One is business efficiency. One is profitability. One is sales. One is marketing. One is hiring or culture and so forth. So there's all these different elements. But what I've come to realize is when I write these books and when I interview readers, often they don't know what their real challenges in their business. Many entrepreneurs are reverting to addressing apparent issues or urgent issues. So the thesis for my newest book is that the biggest challenge facing entrepreneurs is they don't know what their biggest challenge is. And that's a real problem. If you fix the wrong thing, you're in trouble. And the analogy I use is like building a house. Like you can start building the second story and making this beautiful second story, but if you don't have a foundation in place, you're putting this second story on thin air. It's going to collapse. We need to build a structure going up, but also as you build up, you may have to at times revert back down and fix the structure. And so there's this necessity to build from the foundation up and build it the right way. And sometimes as you climb, you have to go back down. And I was studying Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And if you're not familiar with that, it basically talks about the different levels of human needs. And how he explains it is we have physiological needs, like the need to breathe air, eat and food and drink water. And that is our most foundational need. If that's not being served, we will revert automatically our attention to that. While a need above that is to belong to a community, to express ourselves and to feel as if we're part of something. So an example is you could be out to dinner with a group of friends, having an amazing time, having great conversation. That's the belonging level. But you start choking on the food you're eating, all of a sudden, biologically, you're going to revert to trying to dislodge this food from your mouth. You don't continue the conversation. You start coughing. It's a physiological response. And hopefully your friends try to help you dislodge this food. Well, in business, we have the same hierarchy. There's only one distinction between our personal and our business needs that we really have to be clear on, and that's instinct. When it comes to our own behavioral wiring, our instincts are pretty darn good. Like if you're walking down a dark hallway or alley and you feel fright, you feel something's bad about the scene, turn around and walk out. You probably will get murdered, right? Like there's something bad there. But in business, we revert to our instincts all the time. We say, my gut says I need to do this. My gut says I need to do that. The problem is we are not neurologically wired into our business. We're neurologically
Mm.
wired into ourselves. We either have 6 senses or 5 senses, and we can identify all these different things, and it culminates in a feeling. But for our business, we're not wired into it. So in addition to our instinct, we need a compass. And so Fix This Next is something that, with complementing your instinct, helps you pinpoint the most important or vital need your business has at the moment, shows you how to address it. Once you resolve it, you go through sequence again and you find the next vital need and the next vital need, and it climbs you up this hierarchy.
So what are some of the hierarchies then in business?
Yeah. So I identified 5 hierarchical needs, and then within them, 5 kind of vital needs that are within each level. The base level of every business is sales. It's the source of inbound cash flow. But I think it's a misunderstood concept. I think a lot of people think sales is simply an agreement. Like, I got the handshake, I got a deal. But there's actually more to it. It's the fulfillment of an agreement, what a sale is. So it's the handshake, it's the transaction of money, it's the delivery on our promises, and it's the agreement that the event has concluded properly. That's the sale. So all that base level stuff needs to happen, and those needs are all within the sales level. The next level up is profit, and profit is the retention of cash. It brings stability. So while sales is the creation of cash, profit is the stability of a business through cash. And so profit is doing activities that result in savings for the business, and supporting the welfare of the employees and the owner themselves. It is the eradication of debt, not the accumulation of it. So that's that level. The third level up is called order. Another word I could use is efficiency. It's where the primary focus of the business now is bringing maximized efficiency to all elements of it. Now, as you do the sales level, you got to be efficient at sales. And as you do the profit level, you got to get good at that. But order is the efficiency throughout the entire organization. It's having the business run on automatic. And when I wrote Clockwork, it speaks to this order level. When I wrote Profit First, it speaks to the profit level. Pumpkin Plan is part of the sales level. Most businesses will never, sadly, get past the sales level. And that's what I'm trying to fix. Most businesses are stuck there. They're not profitable, and they're in this mentality, I need to sell more to get out of it. Some businesses get to the profit level, and I hope more and more over time. But the next challenge then is efficiency. The business is dependent upon the owner's sweat equity. So that's what Clockwork's about, and there's other strategies too that I'm developing. But then once they're through this level, the next 2 levels up in this hierarchical needs for entrepreneurship, which I call the entrepreneur's hierarchy of needs, the EHN. The 4th level up is called impact. And impact is where a business is no longer about the transaction, it's about the transformation. How are we changing the lives of our customer base in some way, as opposed to just being a commoditized provider of something? What's the greater impact we're having? And the highest level that a business can perform at, I call it the legacy level. This is where a business is designed to run into perpetuity, to continue to deliver on some form of goodness or impact to the community, but without any necessity for the owner, the founders, that there is designed leadership turn to keep this business going, but to continue to be of serving. As I've been doing, and I've been working on this book for 3 years, as I've been doing the research for it, and I literally just turned in the manuscript this past Sunday to my team for the second review, that most businesses, if they scale this pyramid, won't get past, as I said, sales, hopefully profit, but many will actually stop at order, because what happens at that level is you have sustainable sales, you have a degree of predictable profit, and the business is running on automatic. You don't need to be there. This is basically a cash machine. The business just spins out cash. And I found this is kind of a fork in the road for owners. Some owners will say, this is all I ever wanted. I want to hit the links and go golfing for the rest of my life and just collect money. And I think that's an okay choice. That's your choice. A faction of owners, though, say, I want to change the world. And now I have a strong enough structure, a degree of permanence through the health of my business, that I can actually start changing the world or my community or someone. But I can have impact. And those owners start moving down this mission of change and to be of service. And that's a good path too. I don't know if one path is necessarily better than the other. I think we have to choose what we feel called to do. But I do see this kind of fork in the road once we get past the order level.
Yeah, it's fascinating. There's a lot of conversation online and in various forums now about purpose-driven businesses, which sounds a little bit to me like that transformation part. So what you're saying then is to be a purpose-driven business, you've got these other foundations that you have to get right first.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's the funny thing is I think many people go into business wanting to have great impact because they have a purpose. They want to have, they're socially conscious, but they put that before the health of the business. And there's a term for this. It's called not-for-profits, at least in the US. There's these businesses that start up and say, we're going to change the world, and they have no source of income. And sadly, many for-profit businesses really should be categorized as not-for-profits. They're all about changing the world. They're screaming from the rooftop, but they're not making a dime, and then they're not sustainable. So I also, in this model, I have it the get to give model. There's a common phrase out there that you need to give to get. And I understand that idea, but when it comes to business, it's really about getting to give. We need to have consistent sales. We need to get sales. We need to get profit. We need to get efficiency within our business in order to be able to contribute, to give impact, and to achieve a legacy. So this is the old, you got to put your oxygen mask on first before you can be of service to others. Same idea.
Yeah. And it's also, I mean, I subscribe to the philosophy that, if you're not a successful business, then you're not doing a service to your clients.
It's true.
And I always use that to start or to counter any negative feedback I get if I'm implementing a price increase, for example, although, there's other things there, obviously, that you bring to the table. But part of it is the business needs to be healthy. Otherwise, we're not doing you a service.
Yeah, it's so obvious. That it's so obvious that maybe we miss out on it. That we say that it can't be that simple that we have to take care of ourselves first. Let's move on to the bigger, better things. But you can't get to those things unless you have the foundation in place. You just can't.
Well, I'm really looking forward to getting a hold of a copy of that book. So we'll talk a little bit later about when that's going to be available and how you can get a copy. But I'm just watching the time here. I could go on talking for ages with you. This is really fantastic, Mike. But I think it's a good time now to move on to the Buzz, which is our innovation round. It's designed to help our audience who are primarily innovators and leaders in their field with some tips from your experience. So I've got 5 questions, and hopefully we'll get some really short, insightful answers that will inspire people to go and do something awesome today.
Let's do it.
What do you think the number one thing is anyone needs to do to be more innovative?
Talk with your customers. It's the easiest idea, but it's rarely executed well. Ask your customers what they need next, and they may not be able to explain it well. Asking is also observing. Watch what they need. That's where I come up with all my new book concepts, is by really being acutely aware and in active communication with my customers.
Yeah, great advice. And as you say, it's kind of simple to say, but not that easy to do really well.
Right.
Particularly the observe part. And it's about getting to figure out their real needs as well.
That's right.
What's the best thing you've done to develop new ideas?
The best thing I've done is actually take a vacation from work, a long one. Now, I took a 4-week vacation, just total physical and digital disconnect from my office, and let the business run, and then return to see where my business is weak, where it's dependent upon me still. And it's funny, when I toured Europe, I was telling people about this, like, everyone in Europe takes a 4-week vacation, but those businesses usually shut down. What I'm saying is, leave your business while it's operating and prepare it accordingly. But when you return, you'll find your weaknesses. Those are where your business is starving for innovative solutions because it's still dependent on you.
Yeah, that's really great advice, actually. And I've had that experience myself a couple of times where I've actually taken 4, 5, 6 weeks off and allowed the business to keep running. And the first time I did that, there were a couple of things that went off the rails, and the second time it was actually a lot better because we fixed those things.
There you go. Right.
Yeah.
And that's the goal too, is repeat the process to observe how it's improving.
Yeah. All right. Now, do you have a favorite resource that you use a lot?
Well, this is cheating. The internet, of course, is amazing.
Yeah.
So I rely on a lot, but no, I read a lot. So I'm a fan of Audible. That's an Amazon product. It's where they have Audible books, because I can read a book at 2x or 3x at these super high speeds and consume it. And when I get to a part that is of particular impact to me, rewind, re-listen, take notes, and so forth. So Audible is the best, because when I go exercise, when I'm riding my bike in the morning or in the gym or something, I'm cranking away books, and within a week I can get through a book through Audible. It's a great resource.
Yeah, it is. 3 times is pretty impressive. I do 2 times.
I'm up to 2.4. I had a little poetic license there. 2 times I do consistently. I'm trying to get to 2.5. Actually 3 is a rarity. So I take that back.
Well, I listened to Pumpkin Plan on the exercise bike in the morning when I was away on a conference that we were running. All right. Now, what's the best way to keep a client on track?
Yeah, so the best way is this rule I call no news is still news. There's a saying that no news is good news, and that's a grave mistake. So say I'm doing a project for a client, and I'll get the project to him. I tell him in 3 weeks, and the project's going along fine. My past propensity was not to tell him anything, but clients' minds, just like our minds, they wander. And I haven't heard from Mike. It's due in 3 weeks. What's going on? And the default is a negative assumption, like, oh, he must be late, and they start getting upset or disappointed or frightened, and like, what's going on? Why aren't you talking to me? So what I found is to have a rhythm of communication, even when there's nothing to report, and simply saying, we are on, everything's status quo, we're moving along, there's nothing new to report, we just want you to know we're here and we haven't forgot you. That's probably one of the most important things that's overlooked but necessary to communicate. No news.
Yeah, that's good advice, and you're right. People forget about you, and then when it's time to renew a contract or make a decision on purchasing something else, then they say, well, we haven't heard from you for a while.
Yeah, we thought you weren't existing anymore, or or whatever. They couldn't deliver. So always be in communication, particularly when there's no need to communicate.
All right, what's the number one thing anyone can do to differentiate themselves?
Yeah, so it's to look at yourself, leverage your idiosyncrasies, and play into them, and have your business be an amplification of it. As I was preparing for this, I was thinking of Steve Jobs. A lot of people don't know Steve Jobs had a phobia of buttons. Like, definitely Google that one. But he was afraid of buttons. That's why he wore a turtleneck, or one of the reasons. And as a result, his products, the Apple products, are buttonless or button reduced. Like, the mouse has no buttons. The iPhone, when it came out, had one button, but now none. Even though the standard technology, at least when it came to phones, was like the BlackBerry, as many buttons as you could pack on there. And he leveraged his own idiosyncrasies to be the first company that really blended technology and art. The opportunity for us to be different is not to be different just for different's sake. Different gets noticed, but to be different because it's consistent with who you inherently are. My work, my books are representative of who I am. Like, it's almost indistinguishable. If you read a book or talk with me, you'll probably get the same cheesy jokes, if we're sitting around having a beer, as you do in the book. Yeah. But it's true for my businesses too. My businesses have the same feel and flavor, and that's what makes us distinct. It's a personality trait that distinguishes our businesses. And I think we all have the opportunity to leverage our own oddities, our own idiosyncrasies.
Yeah, I didn't know that about Steve Jobs. So it's really good advice, though. And certainly in your books, I really love books that are read by the author, because you do get that sense of their personality a little bit, and that certainly shines through in your books that I've listened to.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely Google Steve Jobs. Just type in Steve Jobs button phobia and get ready for a wild story.
All right. Okay, well, thanks, Mike. This has been really great. Now, where can people reach out and find out more about you and your books, and perhaps even get in touch to say thank you for what you shared today?
Oh, well, thank you for asking. So the single point of entry for me is my website. It's MikeMichalowicz.com. I know Michalowicz is impossible to spell, so I have a shortcut now. It's MikeMotorbike.com. And that's easy to remember, Mike Motorbike. And that was my nickname in high school, by the way. If you go to Mike Motorbike, it brings you to my website. I have all my books there with free chapter downloads. I am a former columnist for the Wall Street Journal, so you can get those articles for free. Plus, I'm a podcaster and a blogger, and all that's available when you go to MikeMotorbike.com and click on Get the Tools. It'll all be within your inbox within probably 3-4 minutes.
Great. Well, we'll have links to that in the show notes, as well as perhaps some links to some of the other things we've talked about, like Steve Jobs' button phobia.
There you go. Yeah.
Now, finally, a couple of quick questions. What's the number one piece of advice you'd give to any business owner who wants to be a leader in innovation?
Well, the innovation is not about studying your industry. It's actually about studying industries outside your industry. So there's this incestuous conversation that happens in your market. So if you go to your conferences, you're going to hear the same stuff over and over. I'm not saying don't go to those. I'm saying also go to an industry that would never have you there, something totally outside the box. It's actually there that you'll find the greatest innovations. Someone else is doing it right. They're just not in your industry. You can take that, bring it back to your industry, and be the innovator of change.
Yeah, I love that. And it sort of parallels a little bit the looking at nature and biomimicry we talked about earlier, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Exactly. Find it elsewhere and bring it in.
Yeah. And the other thing you mentioned earlier, and I think that's really important, not just innovation for the sake of innovation, but have a purpose to it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, exactly. Purpose to me is the biggest magnet for a business. It pulls you forward. I think sadly, I shouldn't say sadly, but appropriately, many businesses are running away from challenges. They don't have enough money. There's struggle, and they're just trying to run away from the challenge and hopefully find something that serves it. But I think purpose is a magnet, and it makes you run because it's pulling you, and now you're going in a consistent direction. Running away, you're running all over the place. When you're pulled towards something, it's a consistent direction, and those businesses make far more progress.
All right, great. Well, finally then, Mike, who would you like me to interview on a future InnovaBuzz podcast, and why?
Oh, well, listen, if you can score Malcolm Gladwell, I would be blown away. The reason is he's my favorite author of all time in the business space, and his thinking is so innovative. There's so much thought and consideration, and he's just an extraordinary intellectual. I've been trying to meet with him. I got one email conversation going with him one time a year ago, and I almost wet my pants in excitement. I would die to have just 10 minutes just to sit and just listen to his thoughts. He's that powerful of a thinker, in my opinion.
Yeah, he's written some amazing books. So, well, we'll reach out to him and see if we can make contact.
There we go. Yeah. So, put my message that you can forward the message that I wet my pants with an email to him. I'm sure that will not be persuasive at all.
All right. Okay. Thanks, Mike. Well, this has been really awesome. Thanks so much for sharing your time and your insights with us today on the InnovaBuzz podcast. I've really enjoyed this, and learnt a lot more about the books and your philosophy behind them and your philosophy for business. So thanks again, and I wish you all the best for the future, and let's keep in touch.
Thank you. It's been an absolute joy.
I hope you enjoyed that engaging and insightful conversation with Mike and took something away from this episode. His books have really changed the way I do business, particularly The Pumpkin Plan and Profit First, and it was really great to talk with him in person about those and to learn about the entrepreneurial hierarchy of needs and how all the books fit together and fit into that model. He certainly has an engaging way of explaining and making business principles easy to understand. I'd love to know what you took away from Mike's episode. Leave a comment below the blog post, which can be found at innovabiz.co/Mike Michalowicz. That is MikeMichalowicz. Michalowicz. I'll spell that again because it is complicated. Michalowicz, all lowercase, all one word, innovabiz.co/Mike Michalowicz. Now, we'll also make a link for innovabiz.co/Mike Motorbike, which he also uses. That was his nickname at high school. You'll find contact information for getting in touch with Mike there, as well as links to his website, to his social media pages, all his books, his Entrepreneurship Elevated podcast, the Grow My Accounting Practice podcast, and the other resources that we spoke about in our conversation. Mike suggested we have a conversation with Malcolm Gladwell, the author of the books The Tipping Point, Blink, Outliers, among many others, on a future InnovaBuzz podcast. So Malcolm, keep an eye on your inbox for an invitation from us to the InnovaBuzz podcast, courtesy of Mike Michalowicz. Remember to check out our Marketing Master mini class at innovabiz.co/Marketing Master. It is completely free, and you can even access it without giving us your email. In less than 30 minutes, you'll gain absolute clarity about who your ideal client is and how you can communicate with them to build and strengthen an engaging, enduring relationship. And if you'd like our help to go even deeper into marketing mastery or help with podcast production, then send me an email to jurgen@innovabiz.co and we'll set up a quick call just to see if we're indeed a good fit for one another. Tune in again next week to the InnovaBuzz podcast. We've got more fantastic guests lined up, including Adam Murray of the Subtle Disruptor podcast and mind reader Jonathan Pritchard. Stay connected with us by subscribing to the InnovaBuzz podcast at innovabuzz.com/subscribe. innovabuzz.com/subscribe. Make sure you never miss another episode. It would also mean a lot to me if you leave us a review, because what you think matters. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your ideas, your suggestions, or questions you have, so go ahead and share them in the comments below the blog post for this episode. Until next time, I'm Jurgen Strauss from InnovaBiz. Remember, be awesome and keep innovating.